Today we're going to break down the differences between the three most popular forms of vitamin A. That would be tretinoin, retinaldehyde, and retinol. What are they? How do they work? And which one is right for you? So let's get started. Before we go into the specifics of each type, let's talk a little bit about why you should even bother having a retinoid on board. And by the way, retinoid is the umbrella term that covers all of them. So tretinoin, retinaldehyde, and retinol are all retinoids. They are in the retinoid family. So why would you want to have retinoids on board? Why would you want a retinol, a retinaldehyde, or a tretinoin? Number one, stimulates collagen production. So this is going to help with fine lines, it's going to help with wrinkles, it's going to help with laxity and crepey skin. Collagen is the most abundant protein in our skin, and it's very, very important. Now, number two, it's going to speed up cellular turnover. As we get older, it slows down. That means that we're kind of stuck with stagnant looking skin. And as we work on our skin, especially if you are working on hyperpigmentation, you really want to speed up that cellular turnover. You want to reveal fresh, healthy, new, good cells faster. And when we're young, it might be 28 days before we see a whole fresh new set of skin. Whereas when you're 51 like me, it's probably more like 40 days if I'm lucky. So having a vitamin A on board is going to help to increase and speed up that cellular turnover a little bit closer to when we were younger. Number three, it fights acne. So retinoids fight acne. In fact, that's originally what retinoids were used for in the 1960s, which is also why they've been studied for so long and why they're considered the gold standard, because they've been literally studied for like 70 years now or something. I mean, it's been a long, long time, 65 years now. And it is widely accepted, and most people agree, most derms, estheticians, anybody in skincare, that retinoids in some form are very good for your skin. We may not all agree on which form, but we do agree that vitamin A is really, really good for your skin. Number four, fades hyperpigmentation. So vitamin A is an excellent pigment inhibitor, and you guys have heard me talk about that so many times, but it is one of the best ways to get rid of hyperpigmentation. So if you are somebody who has melasma, if you have dark spots, sunspots, if you have age spots, whatever you want to call them, vitamin A can help you with that. And the thing about it is this effective pigment inhibitor, but because it also helps to encourage the skin to turn over faster, you're going to see the results faster from the pigment inhibition. So if you are trying to get rid of your melasma, your brown spots, any of that stuff, and you're not using a vitamin A, you should get a vitamin A on board, because all of your efforts with all of your pigment inhibitors, your arbutin, your kojic acid, your resveratrol, your azelaic acid, your vitamin C, all of those things will be amplified if you add a vitamin A to your nighttime routine, because it will be a pigment inhibitor, but it will increase that cellular turnover so you see the fruits of your labor faster. And finally, vitamin A is a really great antioxidant. So it helps to fight against environmental stressors, free radicals. We talk about this a lot. The reason why that is so important is because those things attack our collagen, attack our elastin, and we are constantly bombarded with UV, with pollution, with all kinds of environmental stressors that actually are aging us faster. Vitamin A is this really potent antioxidant that is going to help to fight that off. So I would say, especially if you have vitamin A on board at night and you have vitamin C on board in the morning, you have some really effective AM, PM antioxidants constantly working for you, which is really, really important to the preservation of the collagen and elastin that we already have. Not to mention, they help in promoting new collagen. Both of those things help to promote new collagen. So obviously with benefits like that, it's easy to see why it's been considered the gold standard for skincare for so long. It's been studied and studied and studied. I mean, there are studies and studies and studies and studies that show how good vitamin A is for you in multiple forms. So not just in the prescription form. There are studies about retinol. There are studies about retinaldehyde. And so we really can pick and choose which version of vitamin A works best for our skin. So let's break down the three different types. Number one, tretinoin. Tretinoin is going to be your prescription version of vitamin A. Yes, you have to get a prescription or you have to get it from a doctor. And the deal with tretinoin, why it is worth investigating, is because it is the active form of the three that we're going to talk about today. Why that matters is the active form is required to actually interact with the retinoid receptors in our skin. And that interaction is what sets off all of those good things that we just talked about. If you want those, that interaction with the retinoid receptor has to happen. Imagine that the tretinoin is a key and the retinoid receptor is a lock. That key has to fit perfectly into the lock, which it does because it is active. It is a perfectly fitting key. It goes in, unlocks that receptor, and poof, puts out all those good benefits. Okay, so tretinoin is active. The downside of tretinoin is it is a prescription, so you have to get a prescription from someone. You can't just go out and buy it at Target or something like that. And the other downside is that it's irritating. So tretinoin can be anywhere from 0.01% all the way up to 0.1%. And some people cannot even tolerate the 0.01%. Even if they skip days between, even if they try, they just never get there. Comment down below if you are one of the people who has tried to use tretinoin and tried to use it and tried to use it and tried to use it, and you just couldn't ever acclimate to the vitamin, because I know there are a lot of you out there. This is one of the biggest downsides of tretinoin. Okay, so now we have these other two. Let's talk next about retinol. Now, retinol of the three that we're talking about today is going to be the weakest and probably the most gentle, depending on the formula that you pick up. The deal with retinol is it is over the counter, so you will find it everywhere. You will find it at Target, probably sometimes in your grocery store. You certainly can find it online. Lots and lots and lots of brands have a retinol, and so it's really easily accessible. It is weaker, so you're typically able to use it more often right out of the gate. So it's really good for people who are newbies and want to introduce vitamin A into their skincare routine. You can often also find it relatively budget friendly, all the way to expensive depending on the formula and what else you might get in a formula. There's a range of prices for retinol. Here's the downside. Retinol is inactive. So the key that goes with that retinoid receptor in our skin, it's just a post. It's missing its two prongs. So when we put the retinol on our skin has to finish making the key so that it'll fit in that retinoid receptor so that it can release all the goodies into our skin so they can do all the great things. So we apply a retinol and our skin goes to work through an enzymatic process and has to finish making the key. It does that, and then the key goes over and unlocks that retinoid receptor and it goes to work. Typically what can happen is in that enzymatic conversion, we lose a little bit of the efficacy of the vitamin. So it's often not quite as robust as tretinoin. You're not going to see results as fast. You probably won't be as irritated in general. You can use it more often, but it's just not going to provide as good of results, certainly not as fast as tretinoin. So it's a give and take there. Now let's introduce a third player. That would be retinaldehyde, or retinal with an AL. So if retinol with an OL is your slow and steady, and tretinoin is your pro player, then retinaldehyde fits right in the middle of the two. Now, retinal is also the inactive form of vitamin A. However, we've got our retinoid receptor, we've got our key, but the key already has one of its prongs. So when you put the retinaldehyde on your skin only has to finish making that key with one additional prong so that it can then go over, unlock the retinoid receptor, and all the good stuff can start to happen. So you can see that there's less room for error because that key is almost finished. It only needs a little bit of help from our skin before it can become active and unlock all the goodies so that the vitamin can go to work doing all the good stuff that we want it to do. Now, the upside, in my opinion, of retinaldehyde is that I think it's actually pretty gentle. So retinaldehyde, or retinal, works faster than retinol with an OL, but not as fast as tretinoin. And it is somewhere in the middle as far as being tolerable. A lot of people would argue that retinaldehyde is a little bit more gentle than retinol, which is really up to the formula, if you ask me. So how do you decide which one to use? If you're battling acne, you don't mind a prescription, and you think you can tolerate tretinoin, you're willing to give it a go, then that is probably the best choice for you, especially if you want dramatic results and you want them the most quickly. If you are just starting out, you've never used a vitamin A before, and you have sensitive skin, I would start with a retinol for sure. And if you want something that's a happy medium, you want faster results than retinol, maybe you're not a newbie, but you don't want to get a prescription and you don't want the irritation of tretinoin, then retinaldehyde is the best choice for you. Now, can you use these together? The answer is a yes and a no. Number one, no, you would never use them in the same routine. There's no reason to layer up your retinoids. That's just asking for irritation. But I actually rotate my retinoids all the time. And the way that I do that is one night I use a retinol, another night I use a retinaldehyde, and every about fourth night I use tretinoin. And I do this because I can't tolerate tretinoin every single night. I know that I want to have a vitamin A product on my skin every night, but my skin is pretty sensitive to the vitamin after all these years. And so I like to just rotate them so that I never ever end up irritated, red, flaky, and dry, because I've done that before. And honestly, I don't feel like it's worth going through life feeling like I'm molting dry, scaly, tomatoey red for having vitamin A on board. I just don't think it's worth it. So for me, I love to rotate them in. The good news is you can get some of these at a budget-friendly price, and it kind of elongates the time with your more expensive products if you only use them like every third day because you're rotating. So I really, really like that for myself personally. And I encourage you, if you are somebody who really wants to try tretinoin and you've never tried anything before, really, it's not a bad idea to alternate it with a really gentle vitamin A retinol so that you can acclimate to the vitamin without going in guns blazing and causing a bunch of irritation. Certainly, if you start out with tretinoin, you need to use it every third night until you can tolerate every other night, hopefully eventually working up to every night. Some people, I've had clients over the years who never ever could work up to every single night with tretinoin, even at a really low strength. So it's not a bad idea on the off tret nights to use a weaker version of vitamin A. But to sum it up here, all three are excellent tools in an anti-aging, anti-acne routine. So you just have to decide which one is the best one for you, and you can use multiple forms on different nights if you want to kind of rotate through like I do. I'll put a budget option and a luxury option for each category so that you can also pick and choose that way, because I actually think that there are great options on both sides. I have favorites in the budget range and definitely some favorites in the higher end range. So it'll be up to you to decide what your budget is and what you want to look at. I'll put that down below and I'll put it in a pinned comment as well. I hope that this video was helpful. I hope it helps you decide which vitamin A, but mostly I hope it encourages you to use a vitamin A at night. If you're not using one and you're not using one consistently, you really should, and you will reap the benefits. Consistency is key, and it is super duper important that you use a vitamin A every single night, even if you have to use a super weak one most of the time, and just try to rotate in one that's a little bit stronger, whether that is retinaldehyde or tretinoin, so that eventually you can work up to, even a retinaldehyde every single night is a great thing, or retinol every single night. Whatever you can tolerate every single night is gonna be the best for your skin. I hope you guys are having the most wonderful day, and I will talk to you in my next skincare video. Take care.